Hi, I'm Kristen.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
We're readers and writers.
We're sci-fi and fantasy fans, and this is the best of all worlds. Well, hello, everybody. I am very excited. I think we're both very excited because, first of all, we're nerds and we love Excel. Can you tell we've worked in corporate America for a long time? We love our spreadsheets and we apply spreadsheets to how we rate our books. I know that for me, the reason I even created my spreadsheet is so that I could have some kind of like empirical system because I felt I was going a little too much with the vibes and just giving everything a 4 or 5 star rating. And I'm like, is that fair? So I created this system kind of inspired by a YouTuber and I have kind of stuck to it for the last almost 5 years now.
Nice. Yes. And I also like to rate my books with a spreadsheet. Mine is a little less complicated than Michelle's, but basically I started it because I'm like, I want to keep track of what books I read and what year I read them. And I want to do it on my own terms in my own Excel document because making Excel documents is fun. Yes, we are definitely nerds. But if you're here for a sci-fi fantasy podcast, you're probably a nerd too.
Exactly.
And even if you're not, welcome. We appreciate all people here.
Yes. And if you have a spreadsheet that you use, please tell us all about your system, how it works, why you use it. I want to hear it all. Maybe my system can be improved. Who knows?
Or if you don't use a spreadsheet and you just go by vibes, we're up to hear that too. What is most important to you in a book?
Yeah, absolutely. Like what actually makes you really, really like a book versus just being like, yeah, it was all right. I'm excited. Okay, we're going to break down our spreadsheets. Like Kristen mentioned, they're a little complicated, but essentially we have categories and we have weighted scales for those categories that help us come up with a total final score. And since Kristen's is a little bit more simplistic than mine, Kristen, tell everybody about your system.
All right, get excited. Spreadsheet time. Woo!
Yes.
So my system is basically I break down a book into 5 different categories, each with a different weight. And then I give each of those categories a score that totals out to how many total points the book got. And then based on the total points, I assign it a star value. So my categories that I'm looking for when I'm reading a book are characters, themes, writing, plot, and ending. So starting with the characters, I have characters and themes both weighted the highest out of all of my categories. So characters are very important to me. Like I want to see complex, interesting characters who really go through an interesting arc during the story. It doesn't necessarily have to be a character-driven story, but I want the characters to feel real and intriguing and memorable, and that's kind of what the character category is there for me. Themes, one of the most important things to me in a book, probably the most important, is what is this book really trying to tackle?
Absolutely.
It could be something super simple, like, the power of friendship, or it could be something really complicated, like recently reading Cloud Atlas, and it was about like abuses of power and like how people respond to the abuses of power and all of that complication. So as long as it's executed well, a story can get a high score in themes if it does a really good job of conveying what it's trying to convey. And it's also something that I personally resonate with and think is an interesting and well-explored theme. Then moving on to writing, that's actually the lowest rated category for me. I'm definitely like a story first person, and unless the writing is egregious, the most important thing to me is what's the story being told? What are the themes? What are the characters? What is the plot? So writing is like in there because I do appreciate a good writing style. Like it can bump it up a little bit if I really like the writing of a book, but it's not going to be like the main determining factor unless it's just so completely awful that I have to mark it all the way down. But I've almost never seen that. So writing's, it's there, but it's not as important to me. Then moving on to plot and ending are both like in between the characters and themes. at the top and writing at the bottom. They're kind of like my middle category. So plot is your typical, what's going on in this book? Is it interesting? Are there intriguing twists and turns? Does it make sense? Did it keep me entertained? And then ending is, I like to think of ending as the convergence of plot, themes, and characters. It's kind of where it all comes together. And does it land? Like, do the character arcs tie up in a satisfying way? Do the themes, get appropriately resolved? Whether or not I like the way it resolved, do they resolve in a satisfying manner? And then, of course, is the ending interesting and exciting? And if you're going for like an epic fantasy, you want like the cool epic ending. So it depends on the genre, obviously, but I want an ending that's going to be satisfying for everything that's been built up in the beginning of the book. So it can ruin a book for me. It won't always ruin a book for me. It depends on how bad the ending is. So it can go either way. I've read some really good books that had endings, but I've also, read some books that were like mediocre, but the ending was just so fantastic that I'm like, actually, I kind of loved this now. So
I love
it can go any way. Endings are kind of a wild card for me. They can influence it a lot, or they can influence it not really that much.
Interesting. Well, I'm excited for us to compare because I feel like although I've broken mine up differently, I feel like our categories are fairly similar. I have 4 broad categories that have their subcategories, but listening to you explain what it takes to grade each of your categories, it's like I've taken what you said and I've just split it up a little bit to rate them each individually.
Yeah.
So the heaviest element, I have 2 that are kind of equally heavy weighed, and that's personal and character. So what I categorize as personal categories are going to be theme and enjoyment, because I know theme is really important to me, but for a lot of people it's not as important. So it's kind of like a category that's relevant to me. And then enjoyment is like, did I have fun? Like, was it a popcorn book, or was it just like an actual slog to get through the entire time? And then of course themes, pretty much echoing everything that you said. Does it make you think at all? Could the theme be something more simplistic? Yeah. Though for me, if the theme is less interesting, like something like Power of Friendship, I probably wouldn't give it as high of a scoring, because for me, what I want is a complex, rich theme that really makes me think a lot. So I guess technically you could have a more simple theme, but it would also need to really like kind of make me think after reading it for me to grade it higher. So for me, theme is more like, was I thinking a lot about this story outside of the story and about the implications of what it was getting at?
Yeah.
So that's my more weighted category. That's my personal category. Then my other equally weighted category is characters. I am very much so a character-driven reader. So I have arcs as their own category under character. So where you have it kind of tied into the ending, I have it tied into arcs. So like, did the characters have satisfactory arcs? Were those arcs interesting? Did I care? And then I have believability as a category for characters, because I have read some books where I love it, but man, the characters just like were not working for me. So like, think like Foundation, where that book was really good, but were the characters good? Absolutely not. They were not believable in the slightest. I didn't feel anything for any of them, and that's okay. That's why it has its own category. And then I actually have a separate category for investment in the character, which is one of the heavier weighted parts. Like, do I actually care about them? Do I care what happens? Do I care what they do? That kind of stuff. And then dialogue is an important thing for me. I actually have it as its own category, which in a way kind of makes me think of your writing category a little bit. Dialogue would probably fall under that.
Yeah.
Like, does it feel like these are real people talking, or does it feel like a writer trying to be clever, basically? And was I kind of losing myself in the dialogue, or was I sitting there like thinking about the dialogue and being like, that feels completely unnatural? And then the next highest category, or kind of like my middle category, is plot. So I enjoy plot, but I don't think I'm as focused on it. Now, if there's a lack of plot, that'll definitely impact me, like you guys may have heard if you listen to the 12-month review. If not, I 100% understand because it's like the 18th book in the series or whatever. But for plot, I have it into 3 main categories, which is a hook. For me, if a book doesn't have a good hook, I'm probably not going to keep reading unless someone has pushed me to keep reading. Then pacing, and we've talked a lot about this in the 12 months review, but like was the pacing consistent? Did it have issues? Was it like a drag to get through? Was it really fast to get through? If a book felt like I was burning through the pages, that's a 10 because I was enjoying myself. I was not struggling at all to read it. But, you know, if the book took me 2 months to read, there's probably a reason, and that's probably plot related. And then I have ending as a category, but it's fairly low in the weighting. It's kind of just like, it could turn the tides a little bit, but not by much.
Yeah.
And then my final category is world building, and this is probably because I read so much sci-fi fantasy, I felt like it needed its own category. And I think world building can be built into theme, so maybe this is double dipping theme a little bit within my categories, but that's okay. For world building, I have it in 3 categories. That's like, does the world building feel believable? Does it feel like realistic, or does it feel like this person just really wanted this one thing to happen? That could also mean like, did the world feel like lived in? Like, did it feel like the other characters in the world were actually part of this world? Like, if you're writing about a city, did the city feel like it was full of people? And then depth of the world building is like, how in depth did it get? Like, if we're talking like Sanderson, he's probably going to have pretty consistently high depth rating for world building because he's got a system. It's like very intensive. There's a bunch of like different factions and groups of people and cultures and all that kind of stuff. So the more there is to learn about the world, the more depth, the more fun. And then another category I have for world building is actually uniqueness. Is this world like, you know, a story I've read a million times? Like, is it like New York City, for example? I've read a million books that take place in New York City. Or is it something more interesting like The Left Hand of Darkness, which was a world that I had never seen before, and so therefore the uniqueness was super high, even if the depth wasn't as high. That way I'm kind of giving each element that I care about a little bit of weight, some more than others, but ultimately my categories are plot, character, world building, and just generally personal enjoyment.
Yeah. So it sounds like in the end, even though we arrange it differently, we're really taking into account a lot of the same things. I think you just have yours a little more organized and mine's a little more like going by vibes. Like there are numbers, but there are also vibes.
Yeah, speaking of numbers, she uses like a point system. I use a weighted system, so it all will equal a max of 10 at any one given time, and each category is weighted somewhere between 5 and 15% per each, or no, 5 and 20% for each individual category. Actually, theme is a full 20%. That's how important it is to me in my rating.
Yeah. Whereas mine are like, you know, characters and themes get multiplied by 3, writing gets multiplied by 1, plot and ending get multiplied by 2. I total it all up and then just kind of slot it in where the total score fits within all the books I've read. And then that tells me how many stars it is compared to what it's next to. So.
And I just round it. If it's 6.45, that's a 3-star. Cool.
Yeah, it works too.
So I love that our systems are so different, but ultimately, I mean, I think what we've realized, and we've talked about our systems before, but I think in the way that we've set them just now, I feel like I've realized they're way more similar than I thought they were, which makes a lot of sense why we tend to have very similar feelings about books, even if we get to it like in a slightly different way.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we do seem to put a higher weight on a lot of the same things like character and themes.
Because how much you said characters your heaviest weighted?
And character
category?
And themes are both my heaviest weighted. So, yeah.
And technically, since themes make up like 20% of my scoring, and characters take up 30%, they are also technically my highest 2 sections. But I DNF probably, maybe I'm overstating this, but I feel like I might DNF more frequently than you do.
Oh, yeah. I think I started DNFing more just because I don't have as much time in my life, and I'm like, I usually I just power through, even if I'm not enjoying a book that much. But recently, I'm just like, no, it's just I'm done. I don't rate books that I DNF though, because I don't think that's fair to the book. I would want to give it a whole read before I gave it any rating.
Yeah.
But yeah. I do DNF things. It happens.
Well, I'm proud of you for getting to that point. That's a very big step. So, I mean, if we counted every book I DNF'd, it would be like an insanely long list. I'll grade it up to the point where I got as best I can. I just obviously can't rate the ending, so I'll just give it like a 5, like a neutral.
Yeah.
Or something.
And I feel like that actually, that comes right back to, like, the ending is important to me. I don't feel like, if I don't have the full picture of what the author was trying to say, I don't feel like I can rate them accurately, because I want to see the whole picture of the story and judge it based on everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like if the ending was really bad, it would probably affect multiple categories for me. Even though I have like a standalone ending, to me that's more like, did the ending feel like it matched everything that was built up? Did the ending feel like it was interesting or twisty or whatever? So a little bit, but not so much.
That's fair. That's fair. And it's not even my highest rated category, but it is important to me, like important enough that I broke it out from just being part of the plot. It's like, no, the ending is pulling its weight other than just being a fun part of the plot. It's doing other stuff too.
Exactly. I think now the best way to really understand the differences between our systems would be to give a couple examples.
Yes. We'll start with the recommendations of good things you can pick up, and if you stick around to the end, you can just hear us rant about books that really, really annoyed us. All right. So what do you have as your top example of a 5-star book?
My top book that I had in here was a contemporary. So this doesn't have the highest score, but it has a 9.65, which I would round up to a 5-star. And that is Kindred by Octavia Butler. Essentially, the premise is you have a woman in the 70s. She is African American and she's dating a white guy, so it's already like a tense situation that she's in. But then she travels to the past accidentally, and she ends up in slavery-era America on a plantation. And the first time she travels to the past, she saves this little boy from drowning. And over time, she keeps going back to the same child as it grows up, and she becomes a little bit more ingrained into that world, and things happen, and I can't really go into too much detail without spoiling the book, but long story short, the time travel mechanic isn't necessarily super reliable.
Interesting.
It's unpredictable. Yes. For this book, my rating shows that the hook wasn't the strongest, but it was good enough to keep me invested. I gave it an 8, so it's not like a hook that will stick with me. Like, I'm not, like, the image isn't lingering in my mind, but it was pretty good. Like, 8 is really high for a hook. And then pacing, I put 10, which means I was burning through it. I just kept reading and kept reading. The ending, I also gave it 10. I felt like the ending probably would meet a lot of your standards. Like, it was a really strong thematic ending to everything that had been built up. And I felt like all the ends were tied very well. Like, there was a nice big bow at the end of this story, which also bled into the character arcs getting a 10, the believability getting a 10, the investment in the characters getting a 10, and the dialogue getting a 9, only because there were like a few moments that I was like, would they really say that? But it wasn't enough to like take away anything from the story. With the world building, even though it's historical fiction, I actually gave it pretty high rating in world building, so believability 10, there was nothing that happened that felt unrealistic in terms of the world itself, whether that's the 1970s world or the 1800s world. Then the depth, I gave an 8, so not the highest depth score, but also that's not the highest weighted thing on my score, so the uniqueness also gave it an 8 because traveling to plantation era South as a black person isn't exactly a book I've seen a lot. I haven't seen a lot of those time travel books personally, so I felt like that gave it quite a bit of uniqueness. And then for themes and personal enjoyment, 10 and 10. I really enjoyed reading the book. I mean, there's a lot of 10s on this for a reason.
Yeah, that's really cool to like walk through and see how you rated it out in all the categories. The spreadsheet nerd is like, I'm real excited.
Yes.
Like, so
what's your 5 star?
Yes, so moving on to my 5 star, it is I'm gonna try not to talk a ton about it, even though it's super popular because it is the third book in a trilogy, but it is The Return of the King.
Classic.
By far my favorite Lord of the Rings book. Like, it's not even close. Like, it is bizarre how much I just love specifically Return of the King. I like the other 2 books, but I heckin' love Return of the King. So I gave this book 6 for characters because the characters are just great. You're seeing them at the end of their arcs. They're going through all sorts of stuff, like, you know, getting toward Mordor and having to fight big battles and just deal with betrayals and politics and all this great, like, epic drama.
Right.
And we've also got a 6 on the themes because I just Tolkien does themes so well. Like, that's one of my maybe my favorite thing about his writing is the themes are just so good. Especially, like, my favorite theme by far out of Lord of the Rings is just like the power of like how someone like so small and insignificant doing something as simple as like an act of mercy or love can have the power to like overthrow evil empires. Like, I think that's such a powerful and wonderful theme, and Return of the King, you know, does that super well. For writing, I did give that one only a 5 because
you gave it a 5 for writing.
5 out of 6. So I marked it down simply because Tolkien's writing style is not my favorite. I think it's well written.
That's why I'm surprised it's 5.
It's well written. Like, there was literally a moment in Return of the King, a certain cavalry ride that if you know, you know. That moment I literally had to go back and reread. I was like, I don't even care for Tolkien's prose that much, but that was so good. Like, so I'm like, it earned it a 5. Okay. It earned it a 5. It's like it's drier and less deep point of view than my typical preferred writing style, but it's done so well in this book. So I'm like, you know what? 5. It gets a 5.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting a 5 for Tolkien. That's impressive.
I know. I don't think he got a 5 on the other 2, but he got a 5 on that one.
I was going to say, I'd be curious.
And then plot also had a 5. I think that one's a 5 mostly because the ending does kind of go on and on and on. But it's really good. So it's like, I love the ending, and I gave the ending a 6, but it's also like the pacing's a little wonky. So that's why I took a point off of plot, even though I absolutely adore everything that goes on in the ending, and it just wraps everything up so well. And so I think Return of the King just knocks that out of the park. So yeah, I've been ranting about this for a bit, but I love this book, so it got a 5-star. Like, favorite fantasy book of all time, for sure.
Yes. Well, I think that leads us pretty well into the 4.5 category, where it is good, but maybe there's a few things that weren't our favorite thing about the book. Otherwise, it would have been a 5-star. For me, mine is a pretty recent read. How recent is yours?
It was last year, so kind of recent.
Fairly recent. Yeah, fairly. When you read this many books, there's been a lot of books since. But okay, well, my 4.5-star book is a book that I literally just finished last week, so it is very fresh, and that is called Artificial Wisdom by Thomas Weaver, which is a political sci-fi thriller about there's some kind of election happening, and there's a journalist who has just received this massive tea about one of the politicians And if it's true, it will make or break this election. And so he's trying to uncover the truth of this situation, which is deeply personal. So he's a little biased towards, like, figuring it out. Even if he's not biased towards the solution, he's biased to figure it out. And along the way, it gets super complicated. Nothing is as it seems. And there are so many twists that you're going to be like, what? Yeah, really my problems with it were fairly minimal, which you'll see when it gets into the grading. So the hook was fantastic, man. I was ready to go. The hook is a woman dying as the opening scene. So when a character dies as the opening scene, you've got me. Like, I want to know, who is this person? Why did they die? What do they matter to the plot? As you will find out literally immediately, so it's not a spoiler, this person who died is the wife of the main character. And that happened 10 years ago and is the basis for this entire investigation. So I felt like the hook was really good. It had me. I was like, why is she dying? Who is she? Why did this happen? Like, I was very invested. The pacing of the book, I actually gave a 9, which means it was good, but there were like maybe a few moments where it either dragged or felt like certain scenes went on too long, or maybe, I don't know, that kind of stuff. So it was really solid, but there were just a few moments where it just I wasn't as invested. And then the ending I gave an 8, which I think kind of is because this is the first in a trilogy. So it doesn't have as satisfying of an end as you would hope at the end of a book. But I'm cutting it a little slack because it is the first in a trilogy. The character arcs I also rated kind of low. I gave them a 7, which is decent. But I didn't love some of the character arcs. But again, I kind of think this comes down to it being a trilogy where some of the arcs weren't fully completed yet because there are 2 more books for them to get through. And I just didn't like the outcome of some of the character arcs. So that's just a personal bias. Believability and investment were really high. I felt like they felt real as characters. The dialogue I rated a little lower because I did feel like sometimes the dialogue was the author, not the characters. You know, sometimes that happens. Like, it's a big plot. There's a lot of moving pieces. He's trying to get a lot of information across to the reader, so some of the dialogue's just a little on the nose, you know? But then the rest, world building, themes, enjoyment, the rest were 10s. So really it was some of the character work and the plotting that took it down for me. Otherwise, that would have been a 5. That was very close to being a 5-star. What about for you?
For my 4.5 star, I'm going with Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. So it's the second book in the Stormlight Archive. Gave it a 5 on characters. Thought the characters were all very good. None of them had that 6 factor that's just like, these are characters that are indelibly etched in my mind forever. I could see them becoming that as I get further into the series, but only 2 books in so far. They're 5s, which is like, that's a compliment.
That's good.
It's like they're very good characters. Enjoyed them, rooting for them, having a good time following them. My rating for themes, also 5. So again, it's like they're both just like a little bit level below Return of the King, where it's like, this is really good. Like, I really enjoy this. I think the themes are really interesting being explored in Words of Radiance. I don't want to say too much because it's the second book in the series and not as many people have read it. But themes are good. There's some really interesting, like, new points of view that start coming in that I think are quite intriguing, that have a big impact on the world in the future. At least I assume so. I still haven't picked up Oathbringer. I know I gotta do it.
Wow, slacking on a 3,000-word book.
It's so big, it scares me.
Yeah, hence why I haven't picked up any of the Stormlight Archive. So intimidated by that series.
For writing, I gave it a 4, not because it's bad, just because it's like 4 is like my, this is fine category. It didn't stick out to me.
Return of the King a 5. My mind is blown right now.
I prefer Brandon Sanderson's writing style. Right. But I thought Return of the King was more masterfully written, like as an
I
appreciation of the
see.
craft and not as a personal preference. Like that's kind of where
Okay.
writing gets at for me, is like I may not be the biggest fan of the overall writing style, but if I recognize that it's just really well written, even if it's not my personal preference, I'm like, I gotta give it props for that. I am respecting
Okay.
the craft of other authors. That's what I'm
That's
doing in
fair.
that category. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly well written book. 4 is like a solid, like, you did a good job. Moving on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
yep.
that's fair.
And then on to plot, I got another 5. Thought it was a really interesting plot. I thought it was definitely an improvement on the first book because I was really invested in all the different perspectives, which I think I didn't have as much in the first one, but I really started getting invested in pretty much everyone. Overall, great time in the plot. And then the ending was where it got a little bump there. It got a 6 in the ending because the ending of Words of
Oh,
Radiance is super epic and is a good time.
nice.
I mean, there's the term on the internet called like Sanderlanche, where like the ending of a Sanderson book is just a wild ride and it's so epic. And
Love it.
yeah, Words of Radiance is definitely an example of that. It is a good time,
I
a very good
see.
ending.
Well, this is why everyone loves Sanderson, I'm guessing. I
Yeah.
mean, all I can speak on are the ones that I've read.
So overall, basically the difference between Words of Radiance and The Return of the King is it just Words of Radiance just didn't speak to me as much in like the particular, like the story was good, the characters were good, everything was like a great time, really enjoyed it. But it didn't have that like extra personal, like this resonates with my
Right.
soul. It didn't have that, so I didn't get quite make it to the 5 star. It made it very close though.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That's kind of nice to have your system where like that personal factor really can like make or break whether or not it's a 5 star or a 4.5. 4.5 is still really good. Like that is really good.
Yeah, no, 4.5 is like a high praise. If you made it into 4.5, you've done a great job. It just wasn't something
Exactly.
that was like personally like, oh my gosh, this changed my life.
Well, I mean, speaking of books that don't change your life but are enjoyable, I think it's a good way to transition into our 4 stars. Because 4 stars are just that. They're good, but like they had areas where it wasn't as good, but like they're still highly enjoyable stories. 4 is probably my average rating. I would probably give a 4 more often than most in my system. So that would be anywhere from like a 7 to like an 8.5 for me in my scale. So the book that I picked is literally an 8.1, so that's about as close to a 4 star as I could possibly find. And that's one that I read about 6 months ago. It's called Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. And the premise is that there's this guy down on his luck. He takes a job as a quote unquote expendable for a corporation on a ship that's kind of going to a random planet. And the purpose of being an expendable is that he's going to be a clone for the rest of his life. So his life and experiences are going to get transposed into a copy of himself or a clone of himself. So the point of view of this story is the 7th Mickey. So I love clones. Apparently, I
You do
just
bring up
noticed,
a
like,
lot of stories with clones, which nothing wrong with that.
I love clones for some reason. For me, the hook was really, really strong. Again, a very strong image. If I recall, it kind of starts with him dying. So
Yeah.
apparently, if a character's dying at the start of the book, you've got me. I'm hooked. I'm invested in the story.
Ooh,
That is
murder.
the lesson we've learned. So it had a really, really strong hook. I mean, clearly I still remember the hook. The pacing had some issues. I gave it an 8, which is good, but there were definitely times where I was like, this is a slog to get through. And then the ending was a 7, so it was fine. The ending was fine. Did it blow my mind? Absolutely not. I felt like it was maybe not how I would have ended the book. I don't know. I mean, based on what they were building up to, it was interesting, but I feel like, yeah, it didn't quite match my expectations, I guess I would say.
Mm.
Character arcs, I gave a 6, so that's, for me, fairly low. There was only one character who could really even have an arc, who was the main character. Every single side character did not have an arc, which I found very disappointing. There was one side character you could argue kind of had a character arc, but I don't really feel like anyone but the main character had any sort of significant change throughout the story. And for me, that's really, really important when it comes, not just the main character, but like, are there characters who change or don't change in a way that feels like resonant, like purposeful?
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of felt like the side characters were just there as filler almost, or to like serve the main character. They didn't really feel like they were there for anything else. The book was shorter too, so it didn't explore things for as long. Though I thought the believability of the main character was really strong. It's a first-person book, and that makes it a lot easier to have good believability. The investment, I was invested. I definitely enjoyed the story. I thought the premise was really cool, and I liked the main character's personality and attitude a lot. Dialogue kind of leans into the same thing as the arcs. The side characters felt like they just kind of existed to serve the character and the plot, so the dialogue also had some issues. And then for the world building, I thought it was interesting, but was it super believable? I had some hesitations about some of the choices that were made, like even just the idea of an expendable in general. I don't know, it felt like a little bit of a stretch. And the world building also felt really vacant. Like there's some opening scenes where they're in a more populated area, then they're on the ship the whole time, and I don't know, it just felt like it wasn't that expansive of a world building, but that's not what it was trying to do either. But that did bring down the score a little bit. But I did give it a higher score for uniqueness because I haven't really heard of a premise like that before. But all things considered, I was kind of disappointed. I only gave the themes a 7. I feel like if you were reading this would probably show up more for you in the ending because the themes were cool, but they didn't land in the end for me, which is what brought it down. So I kind of baked that into the score of the theme overall, was the ending of the thematics of the story. But I enjoyed the whole book. Like, overall, I gave it a really high score for enjoyment. Like, I did have fun. Like I said, the main character had a really good voice. It was really interesting, but it had some, like, I would say, that's like an execution issue for me.
Mm.
What's a 4-star for you?
I was going to say, speaking of execution issues in multiple different ways, I decided to change it up. I'm going to do a sci-fi for this one.
Yes! Sci-fi.
So I'm going with Red Rising. And Red Rising,
there are some execution issues with Red Rising, right? It's so good, but yeah, there's some execution problems.
Both hidden story and out of story. But yes, Red Rising, the original book of the series, I actually really enjoy. I think there's kind of mixed opinions on it online. Like, some people are like, the first book is just not up to par, and I both agree and disagree with that. So I gave it a 5 for characters. Like, the characters are great. Yeah. Like, they're entertaining, like compelling to follow. They've got good banter. It's a good time. The themes also got a 5. I just enjoy a good story that's like themed around like, you know, right, revolution and you know infiltrating the upper ranks and all of that. Right. So
dismantling class system.
the corrupt system and trying to make it better. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I grew up on dystopian stories, so you know. I guess I was primed to enjoy this kind of stuff, but yeah.
Well, same. So,
yeah. So
I think I also gave it a similar score.
Yeah. So that got a 5 on themes. What really knocked it down to being a 4-star and not being in the 4.5 was the writing. I gave it a 3 for writing.
Interesting.
I enjoyed the story. Like, I didn't think it was terribly written, but I also noticed a lot of like technical issues, I'd say, with the writing. Like, there were just, it's been a couple years since I reread this, so it's not super fresh on my mind, but I remember I was going through this and I was being like, yeah, I can see why people think this is like weaker in terms of just the way the story is told, but it was such a good time that like that didn't get in the way of being able to rate it well and give it a 4 star.
Right.
And 4 star for me is like, this is good. I liked this book. This is a good book. And so I gave it a 5 for plot and a 5 for ending. Like overall, it was a good time. Like one of those books where you pick it up and I was just engaged all the way through. It was fun, lots of twists and turns, lots of action, drama, betrayal, all the good stuff.
Classic.
So, woo, love a good betrayal. This is fine. But yeah, so overall, it got a 4 star, but it's definitely on the high end of 4 stars. And it was really just the writing brought it down from being a 4.5.
That fits. And I feel like I'm excited because we've talked about doing an episode on the Red Rising trilogy, and now I feel more inspired to do it because I want to dive into that a lot. Okay, now we got to talk 3 stars, which are mid. They are mid. They are fine. They are not mind-blowing. They are not books that I'll probably ever reread. 3 is fine. It's passable. It didn't make me stop because for me, if it's under a 3-star, I didn't finish reading it, probably. It's very rare that I would finish a book and give it below a 3-star. So a book that landed at a 6.05, that is literally as spot on to a 3-star as you could possibly get, was The Gunslinger, which is book 1 of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I hear people talk all kinds of positive things about the Dark Tower series, and that book really did not draw me into the series. I have not tried the second book, despite how much people have told me it's good, because, I mean, kind of going back to my first chapter and then put it back on the shelf, this is the first book in a series, and if I'm not enjoying the first book, I don't know, will I enjoy the rest of the series? So, I don't remember the hook of this book, so I couldn't tell you why, but I gave it a 6, so that's not very good. I pushed through the hook because people said it's a good book. That's what I will say. Pacing I gave a 4, which means I found active issues with the pacing. It had a lot of draggy moments, and just in general, I don't feel like the plot had that much going on either, like in terms of like build up, release, etc. I do kind of remember an antagonist character-ish. I have like vague images from the book, but the pacing just, I gave it a 4, so I was really upset with the pacing.
Oh no.
And the ending I gave a 6, because the ending was a fight between the main character and the antagonist, and it was okay. It was fine. I've read multiple Stephen King books. This was not my favorite Stephen King book by a long shot. Character arcs, I also gave a 6. Maybe it's because I didn't like the main character, but there were no other characters to follow. So, believability, I gave a 4. I really didn't like this character.
Oh no.
In investment in the character, I gave a 3, which may be the lowest I have ever rated character investment. I just was not feeling that character in the slightest. He hits a lot of like the things I should like in a character. He's stoic, he's brooding, he's like damaged goods or whatever, but I just wasn't buying it, I guess. I just wasn't like, yeah, that feels interesting. Dialogue I gave a 7. It was fine. It was passable. The world building is actually the place where I put the most amount of score. That actually kept it from being a 2-star, I think, because I felt like the world building was really interesting and unique, and there were a lot of really cool images that I still remember from the world building. It kind of is in this weird liminal space. Like, it's like almost like a strange dimension between dimensions. I thought the world building was absolutely interesting. I gave it 9 and 10 for the different categories. Nice. But for themes, I gave it a 7. There was some themes, like he had like a lover that he lost or something, and there was some stuff that was working for me, but for enjoyment, I gave it a 3.
Oh.
I don't know. That book was really hard for me to finish, and literally the only reason I didn't DNF it is because so many people have recommended the Dark Tower series to me, like people that I respect. But what about for you? What has fallen into the 3-star category for you?
Yeah, so the 3-star I'm going to talk about today may be slightly controversial because I know people really like this one. And 3-star for me is like like this is a fine book. It's not a bad book. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
And so that would be A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab.
Yeah.
There were some things that I really liked about it, and then there were some things that were just very disappointing to me. Those there was so much potential, and it just didn't get there. The one thing I did rate 5 for the characters. I thought the characters were very entertaining. I hear mixed feelings about Lila, who's kind of the plucky female protagonist of this series, but actually I liked her. I like a sassy female protagonist with attitude, and that's what she was. So I really enjoyed her. There's also another character, Holland, who I can't recall how much development he gets in this book. I did read the whole series despite this not being necessarily my favorite, but that one particular character I think is really interesting and has a lot of nuance and like tragedy to his story. So he's a really good character. So like overall I think the characters were well developed in this story. I think the concept, I don't have a world building place in my ranking, but I might have liked to have one in this because the world was cool. But for themes, I did give it a 3. Which some people may find ungenerous, but I just felt like the themes were so on the nose. It was like, oh, corruption of power is bad. I was like, how many fantasy books have done this? Like, it just didn't feel like it was exploring anything new, and that kind of honestly bored me a little bit. I'm like, could you do something a little more interesting with this? It was too on the nose. It needed to be a little more nuanced and complicated there, I think, to really draw me in thematically. I did give it a 5 on the writing. Like, I think V.E. Schwab is like technically a very good writer.
She is.
I like her writing style, and she has written other things that I enjoy more than this particular series. But yeah, so the writing got a 5, and then right back down to 3, unfortunately, for the plot, just because it wasn't. It was like such an interesting premise, and I think this is where like the premise really like fell short for me. Is like it explored all the things that I had not interested in exploring. Like the premise is that there's a bunch of parallel Londons. And for some reason, this book decides that the most exciting place to spend almost the entirety of our time is in the normal, regular London. I'm like, I want to go to the magic ones. I want to go to the scary, like, black one that you're not supposed to go to. Why can't we go there?
Yeah.
Like...
I felt myself disappointed with that as well, which is actually why I didn't finish that series. I just read the first one, and I felt meh about it as well.
Yeah. So. It gets a little better. Like, I think I liked both of the following books better than the first one, but they were still 3 stars. Good. They were just higher 3 stars.
Well. Yeah, I don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah, I don't know. Lie. And then the ending was another 3. It was like, I feel like it was a little anticlimactic. Like, there were some kind of cool villains that were built up, and then the conflict with them was like dealt with like just a little too fast for my liking. So yeah, like I said, it's rated a 3-star for a reason. It means 3 stars. Like, this is still a good book. Like, I would not trash this book.
Right.
It just it's not my favorite for certain reasons.
Well, I know we're kind of running upwards on time for this particular episode, but did you want to touch on what's a really, really bad example of a book?
Well, I'll be brief on my number 2. It's Crossroads of Twilight, the 10th book of Wheel of Time. Did not do it for me. I love Wheel of Time dearly. That book, literally nothing happens. I gave it a 5 in characters because I love the characters of Wheel of Time. They're great. Themes, 4, because the themes are good. Wheel of Time, good themes. The writing style, technically, fine. It's a 4. The plot got a 1. The plot was absolutely non-existent. Nothing happened. I can think of like maybe 2 things that happened in this entire, like, I think it's like a 700-page book or something ridiculous like that nothing happened in. It was wild. And then the ending got a 2 because the ending was maybe the most interesting part of the book and still wasn't even interesting. So Sorry, Crossroads of Twilight, but by far the sloggiest slog of the entire Wheel of Time. Not even close. All the other books are just offended to be lumped in with it. I'm sorry.
So what you're saying is, as someone who is considering reading the full series, just skip book 10.
That may be sacrilegious for a Wheel of Time fan to say, but honestly, you wouldn't miss much.
I'd probably be fine skipping it. Maybe I can read some Spark Notes.
If you read a summary, you're fine. I don't know what happened with Crossroads of Twilight, but it didn't go well. So do you have a 2-star to share, or since you said you tend to only rate like down to 3s, perhaps you don't have anything too much lower?
Yeah, the only 2 stars of books that I finished were books written by people that I know. So I don't want to name those books, but long story short, it kind of comes down to technical skill. The one book that I gave a really low score, the premise I didn't love. The character had almost no arc. The side characters were just like, I don't know, stand-ins for like, I felt like the book was fundamentally problematic. But again, I won't say what the book was, but I just felt like, in general, just what the character was going through was problematic in and of itself. It was a romance, so I'll just leave it at that. And I never gave this directive feedback to them, so I will not be naming what those stories are or who those people were.
And I'm also, for my 1-star example, I'm also going to keep it unnamed just because my antipathy for this book is so strong that it's like, this author probably doesn't deserve it. They probably didn't realize how deeply they bothered me by writing this book. But also, I kind of had a good time reading it and realizing that the reason it originally bothered me back when I read it in middle school was because it was just bad. It was just bad. But I was too young to realize how just technically bad it was. But yeah, anyway, it's a story that is like a historical fiction, Christian themes, but very heavy-handed, bash you over the head with it. It features the most egregiously flubbed redemption potential that I've ever seen, ever, anywhere at all. And I gave it a 1 in characters, a 1 in themes, a 1 in writing, a 1 in plot, and wait for it, a 0 in ending. This is unprecedented. The ending annoyed me so much I couldn't even give it 1 point because it just pretty much just trashed the only things that were even good about the rest of the book. It's just like, nope, we're just gonna throw it in a dumpster and light it on fire and oh, by the way, love at first sight. Let's run away. It's like, no. I could rant forever about this, so I'm not going to go into detail. But to get a 1-star for me, that's the kind of like actual, like, you actively bothered me. Then you'll get a 1-star. And there's only 2 books that haven't managed that. So you're probably good. You're probably not going to get a 1-star from me unless you did something egregiously wrong.
Yeah. Even those 2 books that I mentioned, I didn't give a 1-star. They weren't that bad, but I have yet to finish a book that's bad, but I also DNF books that I don't like. But I finished my friends' books because obviously they're my friends and I committed to reading their books. I don't know that I've ever given a 1-star before.
Yeah, it was weirdly entertaining to read, considering how much I hated it.
I love it. Hey, you know what? And that's okay. Sometimes it can be entertaining and egregiously bad at the same time. That kind of makes me think of this movie called Velocipaster.
Oh, no.
Where the pastor turns into a velociraptor.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But yeah, tell us all about your system for rating books. I'm very curious. I feel like everyone kind of has their own thing. Again, mine is kind of based off a YouTuber that I liked shared their system, and I was like, I'm gonna make a system. And then we started getting closer, and we realized we both had a system, and that was a fun little moment.
Mm-hmm. Systems are fun. Spreadsheets are fun. I add pretty colors tonight. It's a good time.
Yes. Spreadsheets galore. But yeah, tell us all about your systems. Tell us what you think of the books we talked about if you've read them. Recommend a book that you think maybe would end up high on our rating scale. I'd be down for that as well. And otherwise, just thank you for listening.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.